Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, we are going to spend some more time talking about the X-Men. Why? Because the X-Men are back, and it feels good to have them be back. It feels good to read an X-Men comic and to have that feeling of anticipation for the next issue to come. That is what it's like to actually read the House of X. And I've read it 3 times. I'm probably going to read it one more time before we get to the Powers of 10 next week. But I am excited about the X-Men. I am more excited about this than I have been in a very, very long time. And I think that this feeling that I have is a feeling that is shared by many other people out there that have been sending me messages, that have been commenting on my videos and sending me emails talking about the X-Men. And so in this video, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about some aspects of the X-Men that I find fascinating. And one aspect of what Jonathan Hickman is trying to do is he is providing some additional context and fleshing out some details of some things that we didn't really know before, maybe we assumed before, but he is laying it out for us in an effort to basically show us what the path forward is for mutants. And so to that point, one of the things that he defines, I think, incredibly well in the House of X is Omega level mutants. This is a term that we've heard batted about for years and years, but it isn't until this House of X that he really starts to define not only what an Omega level mutant is, but what an Omega level mutant isn't. And then he also provides us with a list of the Omega level mutants, right? To really definitively be able to say to us, this person is an Omega level, which I think is really helpful because there have been a lot of characters over the years that we've believed to be that level, to have that level of power. But Jonathan Hickman is really just laying it out for us in those interstitial pages that he included in the House of X. Now, the term mutants is a term that has been used since the 1950s. In fact, this term has been used in books like Amazing Detective Cases, Man Comics, The Journey into Mystery, just to name a few of the comics where that term has appeared. And this term has been thrown about for a long time without ever really being defined. And it was in the 1960s that Stan Lee actually put some additional texture and context to the term by defining mutants as a subspecies of humans. And so that was a new little twist that he added. And he kind of used the term mutant almost like a plot device, in the sense that Stan and his co-creators wanted to introduce some characters, but they didn't want to take all the time, energy, and effort to really define the origin of those characters, right? Whether they be villains or heroes. And so what he was doing was basically using the term mutant almost as like a plot device, as a catch-all bucket for, I don't have to explain it because they're mutants. And so you have a ton of characters that were introduced in the 1960s that were called mutants without ever really defining, where they came from or how their powers came to be. They were simply mutants, and that's all that we needed to know in order to understand these characters and move forward with them. The term Omega level mutants was actually a term that came about when Chris Claremont was actually working on the Uncanny X-Men. In I think it was issue number 208 of the Uncanny X-Men, Chris Claremont actually uses the term Omega level mutants. And in this issue, it's basically Nimrod, and Nimrod is on Earth, and he is surveilling the landscape. I think it was in New York, and he gets an alert as he's scanning and surveying the landscape. He gets an alert of an Omega level mutant known as Phoenix, and at the time, the Phoenix Force was actually housed in Rachel Summers. And so, in this very brief description that we get on, like a half a page, it basically outlines that the Phoenix is an Omega level mutant, but Chris really didn't define it. What he did say, however, was that the upper limit of the target subject's ability has yet to be determined. That was essentially all that he said about Omega level mutants. And then, let me take that back. He then goes on to say, Nimrod goes on to basically say that an Omega level mutant's powers were basically on par with Nimrod. And Nimrod ascertained that the Phoenix Force, which was contained in Rachel Summers, wasn't at its full capabilities. And so now was the time to strike, to basically, take down the Phoenix Force before Rachel really understood how to use the powers that she was now housing within her body. And so that was basically, one of the early mentions of Omega level mutants. It was basically from Chris Claremont and his fantastic run on the Uncanny X-Men. Now, as I mentioned, over the years, there's been a huge list of characters that people have assumed to be Omega level mutants. And the list is really long, starting with like Charles Xavier. A lot of people have assumed that Charles Xavier was an Omega level mutant. But based upon what Jonathan Hickman is doing in House of X, that does not appear to actually be the case. And I think that was one of the bigger shockers for people. In fact, I actually received a question from a subscriber along those lines of why isn't Professor X listed? The reason is that Professor X actually is not an Omega level mutant. On this specific interstitial page, Jonathan Hickman does a really good job of drawing comparison between two characters who could be considered Omega level mutants. He actually compares Magneto to Forge, and both of these guys are really at the top of their game. And he basically says that Magneto, who is the master of magnetism, is basically an Omega level mutant because no one can surpass his manipulation of magnetism. There is no other person that has powers that are greater than his, and they really don't know the full scope of what his abilities are. Like, his daughter actually has the same powers, but she is not as dominant as he is. And so for that reason, he's an Omega level mutant and she isn't. But Jonathan also looks at a character like Forge, and Forge is one of my favorite X-Men. I really dig Forge, and he has a mutant ability to really be able to understand technology. And there's no one like him. There's no other mutant that really has that ability. But there are other people that have abilities and talents that actually can surpass his understanding and manipulation of technology. Tony Stark and Reed Richards are two examples of just humans that are genius level that can actually have some mastery of technology that could surpass Forge. And so just using that very simple comparison, he helps us to understand why Magneto is an Omega level mutant and why Forge, for example, isn't. And I think this was really invaluable because, again, there's a lot of people out there that believe that this character or that character, because they were really good at what they did, they were masters or Omega level, and that's just not the case. And Jonathan goes even further, where he basically just gives us a list of all those characters that are considered to be Omega level characters. Now, here's the thing. What I don't know is whether the 14 people that are actually on that list is the complete list. I don't know whether other characters are going to be added. I don't know if this is all. And so it's going to be interesting to kind of see how this plays out, because maybe he's identifying these 14 characters because these individuals will have a significant role to play in House of X and Powers of X. Or it could just be that this is the complete list of all those individuals that are Omega level. And so in this next section, what I want to do is I want to tick off those 14 individuals that Jonathan Hickman has identified. I want to talk maybe briefly about their powers, and then also talk about their first appearances as well, in the event that you want to go out and pick up some of these first appearances. And I can tell you, there are some characters on this list that I was not familiar with at all. There are a couple of very obscure characters, and there are some that are pretty well known and pretty obvious. But let's go ahead and take a look at the list. So one of the first characters that Jonathan Hickman highlights here is Jamie Braddock. And Jamie goes by the name of Monarch, but he also used to be Captain Britain, and he is also I believe, the biological brother of Psylocke. And so Jamie Braddock is an Omega level mutant who has the ability to manipulate reality on the quantum level. And his first appearance was in Armageddon 2001, issue number 1. The next person on the list is Iceman, Bobby Drake. And Bobby made his first appearance back in X-Men number 1. And we all know Iceman's power is basically temperature manipulation to the negative. And I think, some of the caveats that I'm calling out here are important, because there are some characters that also control temperature, but in a different way. And so again, with Bobby Drake, it is temperature manipulation to the negative. Joshua Foley is the third Omega level mutant that goes by the name of Elixir. He first appeared in New Mutants number 5, and biokinesis is his power. Jean Grey, Marvel Girl, telepathy goes back to X-Men number 1. And you're going to hear X-Men number 1 a lot through this list, because there are a lot of Omega level mutants that actually made their first appearance in X-Men number 1. Next on the list is Legion, and Legion has power manifestation. He first appeared in New Mutants number 26. Next on the list is Eric, also known as Magneto. He has the power of magnetism, and he first appeared in X-Men number 1. Kevin McTaggart, Proteus, is next on the list, and his power is reality manipulation psionic, and he first appeared in X-Men number 125. And I think he's also the son of Maura McTaggart. Next on the list, we have Mr. M, who manipulates matter. He first appeared in District X number 2, a book that I've never read before, but I'm hoping to be able to track down as well. Storm has the power of weather manipulation. She first appeared in Giant Size X-Men number 1. Bennett Paris, also known as Exodus, has the power of telekinesis. He first appeared in X Factor number 92. Next on the list is Quentin, also known as Kid Omega. He has the power of telepathy, and he first appeared in New Mutants number 134. Next on the list is Franklin Richards. I am a big fan of Franklin Richards. He goes by a awful name of Powerhouse, and he has reality manipulation on the universal level. He first appeared in Fantastic Four Annual number 6. Next on the list is Gabriel Summers, also known as Vulcan. Energy manipulation is his power, and he first appeared in X-Men Deadly Genesis number 1. Last on the list is Hope Summers. Her power is power manipulation. She first appeared in X-Men number 205 as an unnamed baby. So there you have it. Those are the 14 individuals that have been identified by Jonathan Hickman as being Omega level mutants. What we don't know, and there's a lot that we don't know. One of the things that we don't know is what role these 14 characters will play in House of X and Powers of 10 moving forward. We also don't know whether this is an exhaustive list or whether other mutants are going to be added. And so only time will tell how this thing plays out. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up, and I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Maybe you'll hit the subscribe button. Maybe you will give me a thumbs up. Maybe you'll even leave a comment behind. If you need to reach me, feel free to do so at Regie Collects on Instagram and RegieCollects@gmail.com. Take care.